Hello everyone. Today we're going to start with lesson 2 of unit 2, which is about temperature. Actually, we're going to discuss and we want to explain the kinetic theory of matter. Then we want to compare the speeds of particles in solids, liquid, and gases. Then we're going to define temperature, degree, and thermometer. Then we will talk about different scales that are used to measure the temperature. Before we start, I want to remind you, we talked in the previous semester or last semester, we said all matters or all things around us, all matters, they are in a constant motion. If you remember, we said all particles, if they are in solid, in liquid, or gas, all particles, they have what? A constant motion. Now I want to ask this question: what is the kinetic theory of matter? Okay, the first thing we have to focus on, the kinetic theory of matter states that all of the particles that make up matter are constantly in motion. And as a result, because these particles, they are in motion, for sure, all particles, they have what? They have kinetic energy. And you have to know, the faster they move, the more kinetic energy they have. To continue this, I want you to open your book, which is on page 113. To solve these statements, you have 3 true or false statements. The first one, okay, to understand more about the kinetic theory and the of matter. The first thing I want the first question. Solids and liquids are made of particles, but gases are made of air, which is not made of particles. Do you agree with this? In the air, it's not made of particles, so for sure this one is false because it's made of particles. Okay, kinetic energy is the energy of motion. Yeah, we took this before, is the energy of motion. What about potential energy? Is the stored energy due to its position, due to its condition, and chemical composition. But here for kinetic, it's motion, it's correct. This one is true. Kinetic energy depends on mass and speed. Are these the factors that affect the kinetic energy? Did we take this in the previous lesson? Yes, the first one, mass. As the mass increase, the kinetic energy increase. As the speed increase, the kinetic energy increase. So these are 2 factors that affect the kinetic energy. So this one is true. Let's continue our lesson. I'm sorry. Since we're talking about the particles and the kinetic theory of matter, the motion of particles is a random motion. For example, the particles, they are not moving in one direction. They are in a random movement. Okay, so the individual particles have different amount of kinetic energy, but their average kinetic energy takes into account their different random motion. You have to put in your mind this sentence is very important. Again, if you're talking about individual particles, all of them, they have what? They have different amount of kinetic energy. But if you're talking about the average kinetic energy, you have taken amount their different random motion. In the average you're talking about average. Okay, so solid, liquid, and gases have different average kinetic energy. We will talk about more all solid, liquids, and gases. We already discussed this last year, but we want to repeat this again. Before we start, I'm going to show you this video. Please listen carefully and write notes. Before look at this question, listen carefully. Let's solve it together.
Here's something you see every day, but it doesn't usually look like this. Table salt is a solid, and you're looking at a large chunk of it. Remember that all matter is made of tiny particles called atoms and molecules. True or false? Particles in matter, even in solids, are always moving.
Do you agree with this? Do you agree with this? Are always? Yes, we have mentioned this, so this one is true.
All of the particles that make up matter, whether in solid, liquid, or gas form, are constantly in motion.
Okay, let's continue.
The kinetic theory of matter states that all matter is made up of particles and that the particles are always in motion. Click the images to learn more about the particles in the different states of matter. The particles in a solid.
Now we want to focus on each one, solid, liquid, and gas, and the particles and the kinetic energy in these particles. Listen carefully and try and write notes while you are listening.
Are strongly attracted to each other and are very close together. A solid's particles are constantly vibrating in place.
I'm going to discuss it before I continue. You remember for solid particles, they are tightly close together and they are attracted together. They are vibrating in their place. They are in motion, but they are vibrating in their place. They have less energy, okay, low energy, so they are only vibrating in their place. Let's continue.
The particles in a liquid have some attraction between them, but are not held in place as they are in a solid. A liquid's particles are also close together.
Okay,
they vibrate and also slide past each other.
Okay, so for the liquid, they are close together, but not like solid. And a little bit they are apart. Apart from each other. They have more energy than solid particles, so they vibrate. They can move past each other, not like solid. They are not fixed or locked in their place. Okay.
The particles in a gas, such as the air inside a balloon, are far apart. They move quickly and independently of each other. The particles might collide with one another, but otherwise they do not interact much.
Okay, so for gas particles, as you see, they are apart from each other. They are moving freely in all direction. If you remember, we said they have high energy. That's why they have the ability to move freely in all direction, and they are apart from each other. Okay, so here when we discuss these particles of solid, or the motion of solid, gases, and particle or gas, all of them they have kinetic energy, but they are different from each other. So the kinetic theory of matter explains the motion of particles in solid, liquid, and gas. We have explained this. The particles in solid do not move around much. Okay, and what about the particles in liquid? Move much more freely than the particles in a solid. They slide past and travel over each other. Okay, what about gas? The particles in a gas are far apart, move at high speed, and collide with one another. Okay, so this is about what? This is about the movement of particles, or kinetic energy of particles in solid, gas, and liquid. Try to make like a table to explain the difference between each one of them, and you have try to turn off this video and write by notes by using your own words about the movement of kinetic energy of the particles in solid, liquid, and gas. If you have any question, if you still have a question about the kinetic theory, you can send me your question. Thank you for listening.